So, traditional Jewish, Christian, and Muslim to understand.
Atheist and agnostic as well as many types.
Ready?
No. I'm not ready to explore this new life as a Cancer.
Imagine me going my whole life believing I was a Gemini. And turns out I'm not. I'm a Taurus.
Wow, my dad was a Taurus and now he's an Aries.
Isn't this wild? Being downgraded from bull to goat. Poor guy.
Lion to a fucking crab on today's episode of
The Holy Watermelon Podcast.
Devastating.
Right? All these things that we thought were true, and they're not.
So many things we thought were true that aren't. Ridiculous. So today we're going to talk about New Age religion. I'm doing air quotes. And a little bit more about astrology. We've touched on astrology on past episodes, like our occult episode. I know we would have brought it up. And I saw you mentioned our Hermes Trismegistus episode. As above, so below.
Right.
So we've mentioned it before, but we're going to deep dive into sort of the modern New Age religions that we've seen pop up in the last 50 years.
I've found a complaint against this whole thing that says that New Age religion is a misnomer. I mean, part of it is fair that it's not a religion.
Right. It's like...
It's a whole bunch of ideas. A whole bunch of religious ideas.
Fall under a very broad umbrella.
Yeah. Some people argue that it's more of a zeitgeist than a religion. Zeitgeist meaning, the spirit of the age.
Right.
Feels like a clever word to use in the discussion of New Age, but hard to say that contradicts the status of religion.
See episodes 1, 2, and 3 of what is a religion and what are gods and what is worship. Like, I get that there was some fervor around it in the 70s, but that doesn't mean it's not a religion.
Right.
Just like there's fervor around Christian nationalism right now.
Yeah. We're not going to talk ourselves out of an episode that has caught our attention and interest. So we're going to go forward and treat it like a religion.
Absolutely. I mean, some people say Buddhism isn't a religion. That never stopped us. New Age believers aren't organized in any meaningful way. Instead, the system more looks like an academic lineage of philosophers, a matter of who has been reading whom and which ideas are being adopted. But there are some generalizations we can make about the spiritual movement that bears this title. Yeah,
there's a few general rules I like. The history, I think, is a little important of where we started using words like this regularly. So in the 70s, only like 50-ish years ago.
In my brain, it's still 30 years ago, but that's a different story.
Yeah. So in the 1970s, young English people, most prominently, rebelled against oppressive and dogmatic Judeo-Christian parents and other authority figures as well, after discovering hallucinogens in the 60s. The hippies. They had a lot of fun. They had a lot of rebellious spirit in them. And they started figuring out, we don't have to go to church all the time.
Yeah, so I'm sure we've talked about this before, but every true zeitgeist responds to the previous one. So in the 1950s, you had the American dream.
Mm-hmm.
People just wanted to settle down after the war. And then people realized the American dream didn't fit. And so then we had the wild 60s and 70s.
And wild they were. So this did spread to America after it. It seems like it started in the United Kingdom. Spread to America reasonably quickly. And has certainly caught on pretty effectively here.
Yeah, I mean, they were obviously also in the middle of Vietnam, which helped the hippie movement.
Yeah, more questioning authority.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good times.
Some people went on spiritual journeys to other countries to learn about mystic traditions. So some dug deep into Christian mysticism. So that'd be your Rosicrucians or your Gnostics.
A lot of the time, yeah. We had some more mainstream, more non-heretical Catholic groups that were mystic as well.
Some got into Buddhism or Hinduism or Jainism. Others rediscovered Christian heresies of Gnosticism. Kabbalah became popular out of nowhere. Those guys came back and sold books about their discoveries and made a killing selling those books to people who wished they could do the same, but didn't have the time, money, or discipline. getting all the gurus and spiritual leaders and shamans and
Yeah.
a lot of cultural appropriation.
A lot. A lot of people are really pissed off about what the New Age market has been doing.
I mean, it is kind of ridiculous
A little bit, yeah.
that people, even calling it New Age, people come back from these spiritual quests from countries who have been doing it that way for thousands and thousands of years and then making bank off of it. It is kind of gross.
Yeah, the name New Age was a thing that puzzled me a little bit, so I did some digging. We'll get into that.
Sure.
So most people who are shopping in the New Age section of the bookstore today are pantheists. That God is everywhere and in everything and in everybody. Though if you look
Kumbaya.
around, not everybody really behaves that way.
I once saw a meme that said that metalheads are nice people cosplaying as mean people, and hippies are mean people cosplaying as nice people.
My experience says that is perfectly accurate. I'm sure there's exceptions in both, but that feels right from my own experience.
These New Agers, like most others, are hoping for a new era of enlightened peace and prosperity. And most people call this the Age of Aquarius. We are living in the Age of Aquarius.
Yeah, there's some trouble around that too.
I know, but
we'll get to that.
Yeah. Nothing's monolithic.
Right? And unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that is connected to this New Age religion, this New Age religious expression, is just made up, which is true of an awful lot of religious ideas anyway. The problem is we've got so much concrete reason to complain about this nonsense.
Right, you get into things like pseudoscience and stuff like that. But I did see how is it worded, like a controversy or a complaint about New Age, and said, well, it's not based in science. And I was like, can you tell me which one is based
Which
in
religion
science?
is based in science? Yeah, that's some tricky business there.
So there's no structure in New Age besides the goal of unifying the mind, body, and spirit. There is a focus on healing, alternative medicines, and occult and metaphysical practices like energy projection and essential oils. I'm sure some people will be mad that we just called that occult, but it truly is.
Yeah, if it's secret knowledge, that's the definition of occult, as opposed to a cult.
Occult.
It's so easy to mispronounce the word or mishear the word when used.
Yes.
So the word we're using is occult, OCCULT.
And just to clarify, if you go back and listen to our occult episode, we don't think occult is inherently evil.
No, a lot of people do.
A lot of people do. So we're not calling this occult because we think it's evil. We're calling it occult because it's hidden knowledge, the definition of the word.
Yeah. One of the great occult or mystical ideas that got ignorantly popular is the mantra, as above, so below. A lot of people start using it without really understanding what it means, but this put a lot of value on astrology.
Uh-oh.
You know, look up into the stars and you can divine messages from them. We've been divining all kinds of different ways for thousands of years. Why not look up at the stars and the planets and the moon and all of these things that, instead of being rolled randomly like bones or dice or drawn like a tarot deck, instead of anything like that, we just look up at this thing that is constantly moving in a set pattern without change for thousands of years. Patterns are nice and useful and easy to study and predict. They also, like throwing bones, don't have any discernible meaning on their own.
Correct.
So you can say whatever you want, and if you say it with enough authority, people are like, well, obviously this is the deal. That's it.
I did read my horoscope the other day when I was doing the research for this.
Tell me more.
It was accurate, whatever it was. I was like, oh, that does feel like my day today.
Did you read
Cancer?
You read Cancer, not Leo?
Yeah.
Did you read Leo?
I did, and okay. Leo didn't feel like it fit. But then I also read my husband's, and his switched too. And I read his new one. He went from a Virgo to, shoot, I don't remember what comes before Virgo. Oh, he became a Leo.
Oh yeah,
I was
right,
so
right.
upset about it. And I didn't feel like Leo fit for him either. So, anyway, we'll get to this change. I'm jumping ahead. Anyway, so today, New Age, what does it look like sort of 50 years since it sprouted up?
Well, as we were able to observe, the majority of Americans identify as Christians, which is weird because we also have the majority of Americans accept some sort of New Age philosophy or belief or practice, which means we've got a significant overlap in these groups.
Isn't that wild? And so the study I found is 60% of Americans accept at least one New Age belief, which Preston said, but this is thing like psychics, astrology, energy and objects, so crystals or Reiki, and that's a wild number. Us atheists are the least likely to believe in New Age practices.
Yeah, what's the number on that,
It's
Kate?
22%.
Which is a little high for atheism.
It is. It's a little high for people who aren't supposed to believe in anything, but still better than people who shouldn't be. Which this is the Christian part always interests me. You've added some notes here, but
Yeah.
I wanted to like the Bible outlaws things like divination and witchcraft. So the fact that 60% of
So the Bible doesn't outlaw divination entirely, but it does put rules on what kinds of divination you can use. For example, the high priest in the temple, he would certainly be divining things, but usually he had 2 colored stones in a pocket in his breastplate.
his arm and thumb.
Yeah, and so pull one out. Is it the black one or the white one? Relative to the question, now you've got an answer. That sort of thing. There's divination that's permitted, but there's still very strict anti-witchcraft statements in the Bible too. The weird thing is that witchcraft isn't really terribly well defined in the Bible.
Right.
But a lot of what we see in modern witchcraft is paralleled in a lot of practices in Christianity too. So
or even just like
it's tricky.
Again, like I called astrology occult and essential oils occult. But if you looked, probably the number of ladies selling Young Living
at church.
At church, exactly. But if you ask those same women if they'd go to a tarot reading, they'd say absolutely not. That's of the devil.
Right.
And so it's just interesting to me, like, where's the line? What are you telling yourself? Why is some good and some bad? I don't know.
I think people will try anything with the hopes that it'll work when they don't feel like they have all the control they would like over their life.
Right.
And I feel like that inspires a lot of the pursuits that we see in most religions, really.
Right, like that Horcrux I made.
Oops.
Oops. At least I didn't make 7. That was an abomination.
Good old Voldemort didn't end up living half as long as he could have if he would just been a good guy like Dumbledore.
Right, make your Horcruxes lay low.
Also, when I say good guy like Dumbledore, I mean that very loosely. He did some pretty messed up things too.
Yeah, Dumbledore was pretty bad too.
So why is it called the New Age? This is a thing that puzzled me. I had to dig real hard into it.
Because this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Age of Aquarius. Aquarius. You know what song I'm talking about.
I have no idea.
Okay, I'll play it for you afterwards in full.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So it's always in reference to this age of Aquarius, as Katie alluded to. Astrologers disagree on when the age of Aquarius begins, though.
Yes.
But it is the major concern that brought us this name for this philosophical religious tradition. I don't know. I feel like the fact that people disagree on this is a big red flag.
It's also like a huge disagreement. It's not like a couple years. It's like thousands of years.
Yeah. It's just wild. Some say that we're in the age of Aquarius now and that we will be until 3597 CE. But then other people, like specifically Rudolf Steiner, says that the age of Aquarius won't begin until 3573, 24 years before that
It's
previous
supposed to
number we
end,
gave
yeah.
you. And an age lasts a lot longer than 24 years. It lasts
Thousands.
minimum 1,000 years, depending on who you talk to.
Yeah.
Minimum 1,000. So during this age of Aquarius, Steiner predicts an ethereal return of Christ, not a physical manifestation, just an ethereal return, but also a physical incarnation of the Zoroastrian demon of destruction, Angra Mainyu. We've talked about him
I
before.
was
He's
gonna say-
basically like the devil.
Check out our Zoroastrian episode if you don't know who we're talking about.
Yeah. Steiner says that an age is 1,260 years, which makes the math on this says that not only is the age of Aquarius far away, based on the year he gave us, that we're not even into the age of Pisces yet. We're still in the age of Aries.
Oh. This is the dawning of the age of Aries.
It's not quite as poetic.
No, it's not.
I also found people saying that it's not a hard line like we see. It's this date to this date is this sign, this date to this date is this sign. Instead, it's more of a gradual and incremental progression through this transition from one sign to the next. If you can't agree, just by looking at the sky,
Especially when it's supposed to be scientific,
yeah,
right? On things that we can predict.
it's
now.
hokum.
Preston.
Another fellow, Samael Anweor, which is actually a made-up name. I
No.
didn't write down what the name he was born with, but he took on this new name for himself. He said that the age of Aquarius began February 4th, 1962, with the alignment of the classic planets with the Aquarius constellation. We get a decent collection of alignments relatively often when we look at our planets and all that in this solar system. But he picked a day. I didn't even fact check whether or not there was an alignment on this date.
I don't think you need to worry about it.
I wasn't concerned enough. Other people have said that it began even before and enabled the American Revolutionary War.
So these are the New Age nationalists that put the U.S. at the center of their religion.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. It's great. Nobody can agree on when the age of Aquarius begins or ends. Nobody can agree on what it means either.
I thought it was just like a calendar year.
Wouldn't
like the
that be nice?
Cretaceous period, you know?
I don't think that's what it's called.
There isn't a Cretaceous period?
No. There's a Cretaceous period.
Maybe that's it.
I feel like we had dinosaurs at that time, so I don't think crustaceans were really the boss.
All right.
But maybe
that's what
we could rename one of the other periods to a Cretaceous period.
Thank you so much. But that's what I thought they meant by it. Like, it was just a chunk of time.
It's basically that, but there's so much more. There's things that are expected for this age of Aquarius. For some people, the age of Aquarius is an age of spiritual darkness, with manifestations of purest evil, when it will become obvious that evil isn't just the lack of good, but it is an actual presence that can be felt and cause terrible things for our world. Other people think it's a great time for advancement, where things will just get better, we'll enjoy freedom. But because it's just looking at the bright lights in the sky at night, it's hard to validate any of it. So the first person to write about the age of Aquarius, based on my research, probably was Paul Lecour, a French writer. And this guy was also the founder of the Society for Atlantean Studies.
Not Atlanta, Georgia.
No, Atlantis.
Oh, okay.
He spent so much of his life trying to find Atlantis, which sounds cool. So he started this society up in 1926. He only stayed with them for about a year before he left to do other things, but he still stayed focused on Atlantis for a long time. In 1937, he published a book in French that translates to English The Age of Aquarius. and he talked all about it and all these things that he expected. You might think he's a conspiracy nut with this hiding Atlantis business. And I think we've talked about this before. All the great conspiracy theories boil down to anti-Semitism.
Yes.
This guy is frequently accused of anti-Semitism.
You pull any thread long enough.
So he did denounce a Jewish hijacking of Freemasonry in Bavaria. He was a Christian, or at least that's what he told people. So the man in question was Adam Weishaupt, the founder of the fairly revolutionary Illuminati. I have not found anybody else talking about Weishaupt being Jewish. But he did put a lot of work into trying to get Bavaria out from underneath the imperial thumb of the Christian church. So I could see why somebody who wanted to have an opinion about Jewish involvement might make that accusation. I cannot back it up. I couldn't find anybody else who said Weishaupt was Jewish. But he also wrote about how the Jews and Christians would eventually be reconciled. And on the surface, that sounds really good.
But
He, like all Christians, generally speaking, who talk about this sort of thing, just look forward to when all the Jews convert to Christianity, because they'll realize, oh yeah, of course Jesus is God. He doesn't have in his writings any animosity towards the Jewish people. He does hope for a peaceful reconciliation. But if you aren't Christian, that doesn't sound like a very friendly conversion. So for Paul Lecour, the new age of Aquarius would be one of enlightenment and freedom. He wasn't so much on the doom and gloom of the idea. And for him, the age of Aquarius would begin in 2160 CE. So that's coming up reasonably soon.
in the grand scheme of things, yeah.
I
won't see it, but...
Right. And he did expect that during this age of Aquarius, that's when Christ would return. So that's the age to look forward to. And that's why it's all important.
Okay.
Not everybody who followed him writing about the age of Aquarius felt the same way. That's okay, and really not even that important.
Not when it's all made up and the points don't matter.
Right? The age of Aquarius, according to Paul's best parody of scientific reason, is established by the sun sign at the northern vernal equinox, as opposed to what the vernal equinox would be in Australia.
Southern Hemisphere, yeah.
So, unfortunately, that puts us firmly in the age of Pisces for the next 600 years.
So not as 2160 that is. But
No.
Okay.
No, his number is not based in science at all. So, like most astrologists, Paul can't be bothered with what's actually going on in the sky and has just made things up.
We're going to get to that. That's exactly how I became a Cancer. We'll get to that though.
No, that's how you were a Leo.
Right.
And we corrected it and made you a Cancer.
Most astrologers admit that the alignment of the sun or anything else with the constellation is no longer important to the system of astrology. We've committed to a paper program that works. We don't need to rely on facts and statistics.
Yeah. Also, Pisces takes up like twice as much space in the sky as Aquarius. So we'd be in Pisces for longer than Aquarius
Right.
if we're actually worried about where the sun is relative to constellations, instead of arbitrary statements that we made about the sky that don't actually mean anything.
Let's talk more about these arbitrary sky statements, Preston.
Do it.
Astrology. So we're going to deep dive into astrology specifically today. As Preston mentioned, it's a type of divination that did originally involve observing the stars, sun, moon, and classic planets to predict events in your life on Earth.
Do you remember which are the classic planets?
No? Is it the Sailor Scouts?
Mostly? How
Sailor
far do
Moon.
the Sailor Scouts go?
Sailor Mercury. Sailor Mars. Sailor Jupiter. That's and Venus were the original 5.
Okay. So we've been able to notice Mercury and Venus heading in towards the sun from us for a long time.
Right.
Heading out, Mars has been obvious for a long time. Jupiter's been obvious for a long time. Saturn's been obvious for a long time. Uranus we didn't discover until about 200 years ago, more or less. And everything beyond that is a more recent discovery as well.
Do we think the moon was a planet?
That
I guess
depends on who you
the
ask.
star, sun, moon.
Being
there.
the moving lights in the sky, the sun and the moon also were treated as planets for a long time.
Right. So the things we see in the sky, or anywhere for that matter, should be hard to refute, but the meanings people put on them are extremely variable and individually subjective. Because we have lots of people born on the same day that have entirely different lives.
Wild.
Isn't that crazy?
But what about twins who are separated at birth and end up marrying different women with the same name and naming their kids the same things and naming their dogs the same things? I've heard of exactly 2 of these scenarios, and I think it's wild, and I'm not actually sure that they're true.
Even if they are true, I still don't think it has to do anything with the sun and the moon and the stars.
What else could you attribute it to?
The fact that you were in the same womb at the time of birth?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. I don't know. Astrology was historically considered a science up until the 1600s.
That's too recent.
Right? And it was widely accepted in medicine, politics, and academia.
So, I struggle with all of these. Okay, I mean, we got a lot of dummies in politics. That's fine, I guess. I don't love it.
But I would
That's the way
hate
it
the
goes.
thought that there's someone whispering in your presidency. You're going, it's Mercury retrograde. You should make this decision. That's horrifying.
It is. But we've had prophets in royal courts for all of human history, and we still have the president referring to preachers on the regular. Academia, that feels weird. We've separated astronomy from astrology for good reason.
Correct.
And it's unfortunate that astronomy got the less scientific sounding name. We're so used to ologies being scientific.
Right.
And astrology held on tight. Medicine? I don't understand how you can attach the planets to medicine at all.
I
and
mean,
people have been doing it all over the planet.
medicine up until about 200 years ago was pretty wild. Oh, your humors aren't balanced. Here's a leech and some cocaine.
I mean,
Like-
even that was the product of testing and development. We were worse off before that.
Right. We know now that astrology is pretty ridiculous. It's considered a pseudoscience, occult knowledge, hidden knowledge of all the cancers in all the world. I can't imagine every single one had the same feeling towards our horoscope yesterday as I did.
It depends how generically it's written. A really good horoscope is like
That's
a good
true.
cold read of, let's start with generic, and then if you want to learn more, talk to a psychic and get the real
Story.
readings that fit you better based on what you have to end up telling them.
So I really want to run through this. So Preston shared this on our Discord a few weeks ago, and it'll be even more weeks once this episode gets published. So a couple months ago, Preston shared this on our Discord. The Babylonians invented the 12 signs of the zodiac about 3,000 years ago. The Earth's position has since shifted. The axis has changed. And the dates of these sun signs, and therefore shifted the dates of the sun signs since their original creation. So whatever you thought you were before you listened to this episode was from 3,000 years ago in Babylonia? Babylon.
There you go. The Greeks had stuff to say on the subject. The Romans did too, but it still goes pretty far back.
Based on this, they've shifted everything. About 86% of the population's star sign will change. And they've added a new sign, Ophiuchus. So buckle up for your new star sign. Capricorns, January 20th to February 16th. Aquarius, February 16th to March 11th. Pisces, March 11th to April 18th. Aries, April 18th to May 13th. Taurus, May 13th to June 21st.
That's me. I'm a Taurus now.
Gemini, June 21st to July 20th. Cancer, July 20th to August 10th. So my brother actually stays the same, but I become a Cancer.
And that's only 21 days.
Yeah.
A lot of these are a lot shorter than they used
Well,
to
you
be.
got to squeeze in the 13th.
To squeeze in the 13th. But they're not all the same length either.
Right.
Which I appreciate because not all the constellations are the same size.
Leos are now August 10th to September 16th, so my mom stays the same.
Ooh.
So in the family of 4, half of us change in half. Anyway. Virgo, September 16th to October 30th. So my husband's now a Leo, which offends me.
Only because it was taken from you.
Only because I really related to it. I literally wrote in the notes, sorry to all of you who base your identity on your star sign. And here I am upset. Libra is October 30th to November 23rd. Scorpios are November 23rd to November 29th. Very short. Ophiuchus, November 29th to December 17th. And Sagittarius is December 17th to January 20th.
So it feels like Ophiuchus just kind of stole most of Scorpio's time.
Yeah. And then Scorpio ate up a ton of... Oh, yeah. No, Scorpio is the short
Scorpio
one.
got a week. Scorpio is now a week.
But it's tiny, isn't it?
It's a decent collection of stars.
All right. Yeah. I guess it's not in the sky very long.
Well, not where the sun passes. I'd have to look at the map to see if that makes any sense to me.
There you go. So I'd love for you to pop in the Discord under our cult channel and let us know if your star sign changed and how you feel about it.
Yeah. I mentioned this before I put it on Discord. I mentioned it in my office. And somebody was very, very unhappy with me for sharing this. I got a lot of, yeah, whatever, because they're not into astrology. That's fine and reasonable. But the struggle is that if you are really into astrology and are really committed to your star sign, well, your sun sign, to use correct verbiage here, then wouldn't you actually be concerned about
Where the stars are?
Yeah.
I know. That's where it's so weird. It's like you're mad at change, but you're using data from 3,000 years ago. So if you really cared about what the stars and moon and sun did to your life, you'd know that it shifted since then.
Right. Any legitimate astrologist, and that feels paradoxical just to say legitimate astrologist, but anybody who is genuinely serious about this work is going to let you know when you do your star charts that where the sun is at the time of your birth across this great big circle of constellations, if as above so below, this means something.
So by extension, the most reputable horoscope website is dailytarotdraw.com because it's the only one that includes, that I found, Ophiuchus in their daily horoscopes.
Okay.
So if you're an Ophiuchus, we're recording on July 28th, so sorry, you're going to have to look up today's for our release. But the Ophiuchus horoscope says your health and well-being should be a top priority today. Make sure to take care of yourself both physically and mentally. Consider incorporating some relaxation exercises into your routine to help reduce stress and promote overall wellness. Lucky color is green. Lucky number is 7.
All right. Apart from the lucky color and number, that's good advice for everybody.
Correct.
It's not a prediction; it's advice, and
Oh,
it's rock solid advice.
Oh, you know, in you do know, because I put it in Discord. It was sad. No, the purple emoji.
Uh-huh.
They have an emoji for Ophiuchus.
Oh yeah.
And so like, you know, Scorpio's the scorpion and Leo's the lion.
Mm-hmm.
Ophiuchus, often referred to as the snake bearer, symbolically represented by a man entwined with a snake. Ophiuchus don't be gross. Ophiuchus embodies the dichotomy of human duality. Individuals born
That's Gemini. Gemini's duality.
Individuals born under this sign possess a natural affinity for healing and transformation.
That's a fish. I don't know. The fish is about healing, and I don't know about
Pisces?
transformation.
So if you're curious,
Clearly, not everybody agrees about what the star
there's the
signs
little
mean.
symbol, has a little squiggle on it for the snake.
Yeah.
So it exists even in your phone. So it must be true.
Great. Yeah. What a mess.
Just enjoy it. Enjoy it for what it is.
Just entertain yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you go to a psychic. If you're going for anything other than entertainment, they are defrauding you. But if
Yeah.
you're going for entertainment,
Have
then
some
you're
fun.
fine.
Yep.
Anyway, the reason for astrology's modern resurgence, if you might have guessed, is less than optimistic. A lot of people are moving this way for economic insecurity, the climate crisis, the general sense of impending doom. That didn't get any better, I'd say, about 4 years ago. But here we are. We're still moving along as a society. But a lot of people have been looking to the stars for answers for generations because they're not finding them here on Earth. And unfortunately, astrology has wormed its way into self-help, self-care, to the point that it's bringing in $12 billion yearly. That's
With
wild.
predictions of growing. It's projected to grow.
Of course it is.
So,
it's wild.
so, as I mentioned, New Age religion receives criticism for not being particularly scientific.
Not a lot of religions have to worry about that accusation. I mean, Christianity
it's true.
has to put up with, well, you can't have a resurrection. Well, that's why we call it a miracle. That's it. That's the end of the discussion usually. Yeah. But because we're looking at the stars and we have astrologists saying, don't do that, look at my charts instead.
Right.
That's a valid complaint.
Yeah, and things, yeah.
We've got things like Reiki and
crystals are big.
Feng Shui. I saw a great meme a little while ago. I will love it forever. Don't blame people or gods or yourself for the things going on in your life. Learn Feng Shui and blame the furniture.
Smart. I like that. Scholarship on the subject of New Age religion is difficult, but it's growing. Part of the trouble is that there's such a diversity of belief in and practice.
There's a lot of books, but nobody's the leader of the organization. There's no canonical scripture for
you'll get
New
the
Age
odd
religion.
Guru that leads a group of people, like Kamare that we watched together, but no even association. Like even there's like the Pentecostal, there's an overarching body for Pentecostal churches.
Right.
And then obviously the Vatican, overarching body for Catholic churches, even if from priest to priest or pastor to pastor, there's some variation.
Yeah. You've got networks of people like theosophical societies and people who put out newsletters, and you've got a handful of popular authors that have a whole bunch of people buying their books. But that's about as close as you're getting to an organized religion in the New Age tradition.
Despite the overwhelming popularity of some New Age ideas, many Christian churches have offered official statements denouncing New Age ideas, claiming that they distract from appropriate studies and prayers.
Yeah, the Catholic Church put out a couple of them over the years. I don't know. It seems like they're a healthy distraction away from the anti-Masonic rhetoric we're getting out of the Vatican. But that still happens sometimes too.
Frank Peretti's 1986 novel, This Present Darkness, connected the New Age movement with secular education and feminism in a conspiracy to overthrow the rule of Christianity. I'm dying.
You all right?
No, I'm dead.
It's a wild book, but a very popular one. A lot of people bought into this conspiracy theory that he put together, and the book sold more than 1 million copies.
I hate that. That's like right? Fascinating Womanhood. I hate that one too. Ugh.
I was reading that for you.
I mean, it was brutal. Need to read in little pieces.
No, you got to digest it in a weekend and incorporate all of it into your personality.
Okay, but that'd be so much work. And I really don't want to wake up before my husband wakes up just to put on makeup to go back to bed. So he thinks I'm pretty all the time.
That does sound awful.
Right.
Anyway, the New Age movement, because that's really, calling it a movement feels better than one religion. It's one of the largest religious phenomena in the 20th century. It helped popularize transformation and self-improvement. Mindfulness and meditation are good things, generally speaking. They don't have to be connected to any religion.
Mm-hmm.
But they were certainly encouraged with this New Age philosophy.
Yeah, and through the efforts of New Age thinkers, many alternative therapies, some effective and some not so much, became more widely accepted. Everything from acupuncture, yoga, feng shui, tai chi, reiki, aromatherapy, and even massage. People forget this. Even massage was considered alternative care in the 1960s and 70s. Like, it was really hippy dippy back then.
Sure. Well, and out of that same sort of thing, we got chiropractor
Yeah,
business. Why can't I think of the right noun for that right now?
chiropractic.
That's an adjective, isn't it? I don't know. I'm struggling with this one right now. But it was, when it was first introduced, a lot more than just, oh, let's put your bones back so you stop hurting. It was, oh, you got the bad spirits in you. Let's adjust this so that they can be released.
So they can clear out of you. Yeah, so
yeah.
some of those are hokum, some of those are legitimate. I'm not going to give my opinion either way right now.
We got to test them out. Yeah, if you're going to have your couch in the middle of your kitchen, you're going to have a hard time.
I don't think any feng shui practitioner would tell you that.
Well, no, unless you actually had your couch in your kitchen. Then your feng shui practitioner would say, the flow in here is bad. Fix it.
Yeah. Generally, the people from whom these practices are taken are extremely critical of the misappropriation of these practices. But white folk aren't usually worried about that.
No, we do what we want. It doesn't matter about the stories connected to these things, the values connected to these things.
It doesn't matter that most of these come from different countries and we've just monetized them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. So the growth of the New Age movement has supported the growth of Wicca, along with less formalized witchcrafts as well. And it's also, I think, enabled the emergence of highly syncretic revitalizations and various neo-paganisms. We do have some people who conflate them all together. That's definitely an error, but
I can see, because it's a bit of a Venn diagram.
Yeah,
there's some overlap for sure, but you're right. A Wicca and Wiccan, and a New Age.
I mean, a lot of Wiccans are buying New Age books. That's a reality.
I feel like I should buy a New Age book. So are a lot of
Christians. And as we found, a lot of atheists.
Wow, too many atheists, guys. Smarten up.
New forms of Christianity have also popped up, incorporating New Age ideas, in contrast with what we see in a lot of the more mainstream traditional churches. A new pantheistic understanding of the Christian deity is certainly a novel thing. It's interesting.
As a lightly rebellious search for meaning, there's a lot of good that can come from the mindful and reflective ego deconstruction encouraged in most New Age doctrine. Just try not to be sucked into tricking yourself that everything works.
Yeah. Americans have proven that the placebo effect is extremely powerful. Found out that makes testing painkillers extremely difficult.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because people that works through the placebo.
Yeah. It's a real problem for the FDA and for all these pharmaceutical companies trying to test out these things, because the only way to really test it is with a placebo for the control group. And they're like, yeah, no, it works. Like, this is a problem.
You're literally eating sugar, sir, but all right.
Right? So, well, this goes back to our Christian Science discussion from a few episodes back, where if you can convince yourself that there was no pain, which is the Christian Scientist's strategy, then the pain goes away. I think it relies heavily on the placebo effect of if you believe it's not supposed to be there, you will stop perceiving it.
Right.
The mind is amazing.
It actually is, but also scary.
Sure.
AF.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And magicians have been really good at reading people for a long time. And that's exactly what diviners have to be able to do. That if you can take a vague prescribed meaning that somebody wrote down ages ago and apply it to the person sitting in front of you, you're a magician. It's like tarot reading. You've got the cards, you know the general meaning of a card. They're general for a reason. And then you combine them with the information you have about the person sitting across the table from you. And that's how you get a story.
Yep.
It's great. But this whole as above, so below business, the idea itself, if you're into the idea that there are gods above and there's some effect they have, that's fine. But if you deny the value of looking at the stars when everything you're talking about is based on looking at the stars, that is a irreparable paradox.
Yeah. So, my ask for our dear listeners is to embrace your new star sign and tell everyone your new star sign, especially if you're a Ophiuchus. I just would really like a work conversation to come up with that hippie girl that's into astrology and be like, oh yeah, I'm an Ophiuchus. And she'll be like, what the fuck are you talking about? And you'll be like, wow.
Right? I would love to say that I'm an Ophiuchus, but I am
That'd be a
6
lot.
months away from that. So
I mean, they're all made up anyway, so say you're an Ophiuchus.
not only do we want to hear from you on Discord, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube.
Very good.
And you can also check out our shop, our spread shop, where you can get cool church merch. And you can get exclusive content on Patreon, where you can also just support us just because you want to, even if you're not interested in what we're specifically offering on there.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Peace be with you.
and salvation for
By the late Middle Ages, the Christian prophecy had fulfilled itself.
God is near.